gewaltig. Dr. Helen Gemara, we are up to the new Mishnah. I just want to make a correction because while I was driving yesterday, I read the Gemara wrong. And the Mishnah earlier at the end of the parak, the Mishnah says, "Keted mevatla, kirsem v'zirad." You took a splinter off of the tree, or notal min a makle sharvit, or you took a rod or a stick off the tree. Even a leaf. I didn't touch this properly yesterday. So even a leaf, a raise of a tail that will mevatl the tree. If the goy took a piece of this tree, this asherah, away for his own benefit and not for the benefit of the asherah, that is his expression of being mevatel from being an avodah zarah. Okay, let's start from the new parak. Rabbi Shmuel says, "Shalosh avodim zu b'tzad zu." If you have three stones sitting beside each other, and this arrangement is b'tzad markulas, is beside an avodah zarah, it's called markulas. Markulas is a configuration of two stones that are side by side, and one stone that's on top of it. You usually see it when you drive up to Camp Avoda. You see at the side of the road, they make these rock formations. So that would be a markulas. So if there's a main markulas there, and then somewhere alongside it, there's three avonim, zu b'tzad zu, lying around, we will say that they are also asuras. But ushtayim mutaris. If there are only two rocks together, then it will be mutar. Rashi says, why, if you find it b'tzad markulas, would it be asur? So Rashi says, b'tzad markulas gadol shekvar avdu, they've served this getchka already, v'zarku alav avodim harbe, and they threw a lot of stones at him. So it sounds almost like these stones are the stones that were thrown at the main markulas. That's what Rashi seems to say. Okay. That's not how you assess it. Rather, sheniras imoy asurais. If it looks like they're nearby, Rashi says the nearest shenaflu misham. It seems like these are rocks that fell off the main markulas. Then they will be asur. But for she'ein nearest imoy mutaris. Rashi says if they don't look like they come from it. Rashi says ain't smuchos like the three stones that you found lying around, or the two stones. It doesn't make a difference how many stones. Then it will be mutaris vafilu gimel. So it's not the number of stones that you find that determine if it's part of the makulas. It's if it's found nearby, which would indicate that they fell from this makulas. Zog to Gemara. Bishtamel Rabbanan. I understand the svara of the svara of the Rabbanan. Kasavri oivdin lishvarim. People treat the rocks that fall off of the avodah zarah. So it's a makulas. When you stone it, naturally it's going to break off pieces from the avodah zarah because it's not cemented together. They're just piled on top as a configuration. So if you hold that people bow down even to the broken rocks that fall off of the avodah zarah, so then nearest imoy the ikalamemar minoy nafal. If it's nearby, so it looks like it fell off the markulas when the markulas was stoned, when it was served the way it's supposed to be served, asuras they would be asur. She'ein is imoy. If they look like they just random rocks that were there before, mutaris they would be mutar. That's logical. Ela Rabbi Shmuel, what's the difference how many rocks there are if there's two or if there's three? My kasavar. If someone will treat even the broken off pieces as an avodah zarah, afilu tatanayim litzur, if it's close by and it looks like it fell off of the, literally looks like a chip off the old block, right? And and if people don't serve those little broken pieces as an avodah zarah, afilu klas nami, even if there's three together, why should that make a difference? Afilu klas nami lo. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, very simple. If it's clear that the rocks that you found fell off the main avodah zarah because someone saw them fall off, everybody would hold it would be asur. That's avodah zarah. And even if you hold people don't serve broken off pieces, the lav a regular getchke, who the way to serve it is not to throw rocks at it. If a rock fell off of it, that no one serves, and that would not be awesome. But when you talk about the markulas, the mikar tavuri mitferi, that's what it's designed to do to it. As Rashi says, she'ena mechubaris b'dakan lipa. This is a getchke that's not built together. It is just a loose configuration of stones piled on one on top of the other. So it's designed to fall apart. And therefore, goyim would serve it as an avodah zarah, even the rocks that fell off of it, because it's not broken. So even broken pieces, no one would serve. Even if you pass them like that we had in the Shiloh, the earlier Masechta, broken pieces people don't serve. In the earlier parak, I'm sorry. Even though broken pieces people don't serve, that's a regular getchka that a chip broke off of it. But a makulas, which is just a loose pile of rocks, everybody serves, even the pieces that fall off of it. So hainu urche would be also. So therefore, if you knew it fell off the makulas, for sure it's also. Keep pligi, the whole discussion in our Mishnah between Rabbi Shmuel and the Chachamim is bistama. You don't know where these rocks come from. It's not clear where they come from. So bimikuravais, if they're very close by, which Rashi defines as b'kagayin ba'ama b'chatziyam, it's within an amma and a half. So it's between like 9 feet roughly, or maybe a little closer. So b'mikuravais the ikala meimar minei nafal. It's likely that they fell off of the original markulas. So therefore, divra koila surais. Everybody would hold its also. There's no machloikis there either. Keep pligi. So where's the machloikis between Rabbi Shmuel and the Rabbanan? B'meruchakais. The Rashi is they're far away. Ba'arba amos. The vadei loy nafal. The vadei loy nafal loy lav minei nafal. It's further than 4 amos away, and that's where we have the machloikis. If it's usher, if there's only 3, or if it's usher, if it's near anymore. Correct the Gemara. The Mishnah says specifically and clearly that the discussion that Rabbi Shmuel has with the Chachamim are bitzad makulas. Bitzad makulas, you're talking about more than 4 amos away. My bitzad arba amos today. It's right near the 4 amos of a perimeter. Rabbi Shmuel holds oisin merkulas katan bitzad merkulas gadol. It's normal that once you have the main markulas, they have little getchkelach around the big getchke. So therefore, shalosh the domyan lemarkulas, 3 rocks that look like markulas, even though they're not in the configuration of 2 beside each other and 1 on top. They're just 3 loose rocks, but they're the amount of rocks that could be made. So therefore, the dam of the makulas are surais. So we're going to soon see in the Gemara. The main markulas has to be made with 2 rocks, 1 beside the other and 1 on top. Has to have that specific configuration. But once you have the main getchke, the markulas around it don't have to have that configuration. It's still a avodah. So therefore, it will be awesome. But shtayim, 2 that you don't ever make anything to do with getchkes out of only 2 rocks, mutares. That's the sheet of Rabbi Shmuel. But for Rabbanan Savri, ein noisin markulas katan b'tzad markulas gadol. We don't say that this is a new getchkela. Loishna shalosh v'loishna shtayim. So therefore, nearest imay surais, because you'll say it broke off from the original avodah zarah. But she'ein nearest imay mutaris. Now Rashi Daich nearest imay mukuravis ma'oid. If they're quite close, then we'll say they're also. She'ein nearest imay mutaris the lav minei nafal, because it didn't fall from it. So if we could assume that this rock fell from the original markulas, then we'll say it's usher. But if it doesn't seem to have fallen off from the original markulas, then it's usher. Rabbi Shmuel holds even for sure it didn't fall off from the original markulas, but it might be a secondary markulas that you're building around the original markulas, and therefore, if there's 3 together, it'll be usher, even if it's a near a sima. Okay, so that's the machlokes at the end of the day. The machlokes at the end of the day, where it's not very close. It's within 4 amos, or it's near the 4 amos perimeter. And the question is, can we argue that it's a standalone markulas, which is what Shmuel says, and then it would need to be 3 rocks together, or you hold like a chavim that there is no such thing as an auxiliary merkulis, not in the exact configuration. It would only be also if we can assess that it broke off. It's one of the stones that fell off the main getch. So it seems like the discussion here is whether this is the original getchka or not. But we're going to soon see there's another factor to consider, and that is whether it's takruvas of Avoda Zara. If you serve something to Avoda Zara, it's also Avoda, is the rock that you're throwing at the merkulis, maybe that's like takruvas of Avoda Zara, which is a whole different thing. We'll discuss that soon. Amamar, b'yadua shenashru mimenu, divrei hakolosuris. Right, the Gemara said on Amud base, if we know for sure that these rocks fell off the main markulas, for sure it will be us. But the whole discussion was where we weren't 100% sure, and how you assess it. That doesn't make sense because avanim shenashru min markulas. The Brisa says rocks that fell off a markulas. Rashi says hainu biyadua. You know that these rocks fell off the markulas. So nearest imoy, if they're nearby, Rashi then akati hava avodas, they still retain their status of an avodah zara and therefore a source. She'ei nearest imoy, meaning they just look like broken pieces, not necessarily considered avodah zara. So therefore mutaris. So this branch seems to indicate if they're nearest imoy, if they're very close by, then they're considered still avodah zara. But if they're pieces that fell further away, they're considered broken pieces after avodah zara, that will be mutar. Rabbi Shmuel says, Shalosh asurais, shtayim mutarais. Now the problem is, we just said that if it's biyudu, if you know for sure that it's a chip off the old block, for sure everybody holds will be aser. But this brisa clearly indicates a machlokes, even if you know for sure that these rocks fell off the original makulas. Amarava loy tema shenashru. Modify this brisa, at least our understanding of this brisa. When the brisa says Avanim shenashru min markulas, don't explain it as we understood it until now, that you know for sure these rocks fell off the markulas. Ela ema shenimtzu. It just means they were found beside it. So Rashi, Tani shenimtzu, their nearest imay asurais should be many awful. It looks like it probably fell from them. Shvarim the markulas, vada asurim kid amaram, broken pieces of the markulas are aser, even those broken pieces, as we learned at the end of Omer Al, at the end of Omer Beis, is that's the derech of how it's served, right? It's made in little pieces. Does Rabbi Shmuel shtayim mutaris? Does Rabbi Shmuel really hold that shtayim is mutaris? And Rashi speaks out, shtayim b'soich arba amoisa of mutaris, as long as it's within 4 amos. If it's 2 stones, it will be mutar, and we won't say that it's the avodah zara, because if you remember, the way we explained Rabbi Shmuel is, the question isn't if it fell off the other getchka. The question is this an auxiliary getchka? And only 3 could be an auxiliary getchka, not 2. So does Rabbi Shmuel really hold that way? Well, Tanya Rabbi Shmuel Omer, shtayim b'tfisa loy asuris. If there's 2 in the tfisa, which we'll see what tfisa means within the very close proximity, is asuris shalosh. 3 afilu miruchakos asuros, even if they're very far away, they are going to be asur as well. So you see that shtayim isn't always mutaris. Rashi assumes that the Gemara's assumption now is b'tfisaloi means within 4 amos. So we would just medayik that if it's 2 stones within 4 amos, according to Rabbi Shmuel, will be mutar because it can't be an independent getchkala. But you see from a brisa clearly there is Shmuel hold that if it's 2 within 4 amos b'tfisaloi, it would be aser. Kasha. That's what we're going to define. Right now we think it means within 4 amos, which is exactly what we just discussed. Now we're going to say tfisa has nothing to do with 4 amos. Kan b'tfisa achas, kan b'shtei tfisais. It b'tfisa achas means it's not just within 4 amos. It's close to the avodah zara, and there's nothing that's mafsik in between them. For instance, v'hechidami, you could goiva beni beni. You can have 2 getchklech that are side by side, but there's a little hill in between them. If there's a little hill in between them, it's impossible that a piece broke off the first avodah zara and ended up over the hill on the other side of the Avodah Zarah. So therefore, there's a little hill in between them. As Rashi says, Dika Goiva, tail, a little hill, Mafsik Beinam Lamerkulis. You have these two stones together that were within 4 amas, but even though they're within 4 amas, there's a little hill in between the two formations of rocks. The Havalu Kimuruchakos, that will treat like Miruchakos, the Lekala Meimar Minei Nafli. We won't be able to make the argument that these stones fell off the original Avodah Zarah, because how did they get over the hill? Two would be mutter, because we know they didn't come from the original Avodah Zarah. Avol Gimel Asurais, because maybe you're making an auxiliary Avodah Zarah on the other side of the hill. But if it's on the same side of the hill and it's within 4 amas, there Rabbi Shmuel would agree that 2 would also be usher, because maybe it's a chip off the old block. Okay, Gavalti. Rabbi Shmuel says that if there's 3 rocks there, that's called a markulas. But we know it has to be a specific configuration. But Tanya Elaine Avde base markulas, Achas Mikan, Vachas Mikan, Vachas Al Gabeah. So just having 3 rocks lying around, 3 random rocks, why would that be considered, like Rabbi Shmuel, as a mini markulas, an auxiliary markulas? It's not the right formation. Amarava Kitanya Hibe Ikar markulas. You're right. The central getchka of makulas has to be made in this configuration. But once they add this central getchka in that configuration, the norm was in the Hilchas Avodah Zarah that the auxiliary getchka don't have to be that configuration as long as there's 3 rocks. So you see how much Chazal, the Gemara, the Amoraim, had to dig in to understanding the Hilchas Avodah Zarah, because depending on how Avodah Zarah was served, that would indicate what's usher and what's not. Zogt Gemara weiter. Beyane Malka Chorev. Yane Malka had a home, palace, and it got destroyed. So now you have a whole bunch of rubble and stones there. Also, there were some getchkas there. Ukimu Be Merkulis. I guess they found a lot of broken stones. They figured what a great place to make a Beis Hamikdash for the Markulis. Also, then another group of goyim who don't serve the markulas, they don't place any godly value in a bunch of stones. Sheklinu, they took all those stones and they used them to pave streets with. And they paved streets, and satritois are intercity highways even. So they use it to pave streets. This then shudders up my spine always, because we see so many pictures of the Nazis that took Jewish gravestones and made them into walkways. So this is an old minhag. They use the getchkas to do that as well. Zog to Gemara. So the question is now, would you be allowed to walk on these stones? I'm sorry. Well, that's the question. Pashas there be mevatel. So pashas that should be mutter, because they were clear in mevatel about Zara. So ikar rabban the parshi. There are rabbanim who stayed away from it. Vikar rabban the loy parshi. Now the default should be that they were mevatel. So why would there be rabbanim that won't carry in this erev, so to speak?
Yana was by Sheni, wasn't he?
I think so.
Yeah. So
Yana was a good king, no?
I can't remember. Was anyway. Then by Sheni was long after the Taiva for Avodah Zarah was wiped out, so it was not as
prevalent.
Yeah.
And they were different chassidim. They're Markulas chassidim. Different chassidim. So
yeah. There were remnants of it in Eretz Yisrael. Nobody in Bai Sheni. There's not an example that I could think of that they were Ovid Avodah Zarah, the Jews, because there's no Taiva anymore. So
but we do know, but by the goyim, even today, there's Avodah Zarah.
Yeah, by the goyim, because
there must be some
minhag avosenu b'yadenu, and they don't do it out of Taiva anymore.
Yeah, the Rishonim say that a lot. There's only minhag avosenu b'yadenu, and therefore it's not really Avodah Zarah anymore.
Yeah, it's more like a tradition.
So even the rock formations that we find could be from the way old times.
That's right.
And now they
Yeah.
still use.
I can't figure out how the indigenous of North America have the same religion as they did like 2,000, 3,000 years ago in Europe. What's the connection between the two?
Well, where do they come from? The indigenous in North America. It must have been some people from the European continent that got there. Because Kula Alma Moida, that mankind started.
Asia. It's actually Asia, not Europe. But yeah. All right. That's just neither here nor there.
I'm sure Dr. Henry Aronson has a shtickle.
Yeah, maybe.
Benon shel Kedoshim. Benon shel Kedoshim, the children of Kedoshim, Mahalach Alayim. They walk on these stones. Va'anan there for Ishmael. And we should be firmer than them. Zok Gemara Man Liu, Benon shel Kedoshim. Who are the Benon shel Kedoshim? Who Rabbi Yochanan announced that they actually walked on these stones? It's Rabbi Menachem Barab Samoy. V'amai Korah Loi Benon shel Kedoshim. Why would they refer to Rabbi Menachem Barab Samoy the Benon shel Kedoshim? Because they were so makbid on the Avodah Zara that they wouldn't look at the face that was on a coin. They were very makbid on the slightest shash of Avodah Zara, and therefore, and even they walked in it. So you're for sure allowed to walk on it. Even if even if Shlomo holds it there, so sure I can carry. That's the same. That's the same type of argument. Frank Lamar Lamaisa, my time in the Mandapar. That's what we asked. The guy was Mavatli. So why would there be any reason for people not to walk in it? Because Savar Lakiha Damar of Gidul Amar of Yosef Amara. I don't treat this as an Avodah Zara. Maybe if it's a rock that was thrown out to the Avodah Zara, it's not the Avodah Zara itself. It's the remnants of the carbon that was brought to the Avodah Zara. Minayin l'takruvus avodas kechavim she'ein la b'telai lamis. A carbon that was shechted to Avodah Zara, that was sacrificed to the Avodah Zara, not even a goy can't be mevatel. That retains its status of takruvas avodas kechavim forever, and it cannot become this battle. Where do I know that from? This is a familiar pasuk. The Gemara cites it several times in this Masechta, and we compare Ziv Chemesim to a mace. Ma mace ein loy b'teila lo'ilam. A mace will always be tamei, and its tumah will never go away. After kruvus avodas kechavim ein lo b'teila lo'ilam. So they were concerned that maybe this isn't the markulas of Avodah Zara itself. Maybe it's rocks that were thrown at the markulas, which we would consider as the kruvus of Avodah Zara, and therefore ein lo b'teila lo'ilam, we can't walk in it. Uman the loy parish. What about the people who walked in it? Why were they not concerned about it? Because ba'ina kain penim v'leka. The only type of zivchei mesim that have a status of iser of takruvus of avodah la'olam are things that have some type of similarity to the avodah that was done in the Beis Hamikdash, like zvicha or haktara or zrika. But throwing rocks, there is no such similar. There's nothing that even resembles such a type of avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, so therefore we could not consider it takruvus avodah zara. The only concern is that it fell off the avodah zara, but for that bittul would be enough. Amar Rabbi Yosef bar Abba, Ikloi Rabbi bar Yirmi Yola Ashrin. Rabbi Yirmi showed up to our city. Also he came, and he brought with him a mishnah that he's going to share with us, an interesting halacha. And this is the halacha that he shared with us. A guy brought stones from the markulas, the chipa behen drachim v'tartiyos. Clearly, he's being mavatal them. He's not serving it as an avodah zara. He's making roads out of it. The halach is mutaros. It will be mutar. But Yisrael shehevi avanim in amarkulas v'chifa ben derachim v'sartiyos. Those will be us. Sounds to me like a very logical halacha, because a yid cannot be mavatal avodah zara. So the Gemara says this is the halacha that he brought with him. Who brought it with him? Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah brought this halacha, and who's commenting on it? And who is commenting on it? The Gemara says, and Rabbi Yosef bar Abba was commenting on what Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah brought, and he said, "V'lasnagar v'leibar nagar the yafrikina." It makes no sense, this halacha. Now, I don't know any chacham that could possibly explain it. I think nagar literally means like a blacksmith or a carpenter. So there's no woman, there's no professional that would be able to explain what he said. I don't even see what the problem is. So Omar Absheshes, first of all, I know loy nagar, I know loy bar nagar, I know. I'm definitely not an expert. Zok Absheshes, uparik nalay, and I'm going to answer the kasha. My kasha lay. What was the kasha? The Rav Gidol. The kasha would be Rav Gidol. The Rav Gidol said that this could be takruvus avodah zara, and if it's takruvus avodah zara, even a goy cannot be mevatel. Right? That was the reason why those who are Pirish from walking on them were Pirish. And I think it's not shver because be'ina kain pnim v'leka, as we answered earlier. It's only going to be considered takruvus avodah zara if it's similar to an avodah that we had in the Beis Hamikdash, throwing rocks, even that are makulas, does not qualify. Amar B'Yosef Rabba, Ikloi Rabba Bar Yirmiyah L'Asrin. Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah seemed to travel a lot, and he seemed to always bring with him a good halacha. V'asa v'aisim esnisa v'yadei. And this is the halacha that he brought. And now we're going off on a tangent. Maslian, you're allowed to cut the worms out of trees that are growing to protect them. Right, the worm shouldn't destroy them. Or what is the pest that we're concerned about the trees in our neighborhood? The Asian beetle or something? You know what I'm talking about? That everyone's worried. So it's similar to that. You got to get rid of these pests from inside a tree. Umizamin, if you have a tree that's damaged, you're allowed to put manure on the damaged area. I guess that helps it heal better, Rashi says. And or if some of its bark is missing, you would put zevel on it and you would tie it around as a bandage to the tree. B'shvius, you're allowed to do this on the Shemitah year, but the ein maslin mezamin b'moed. But you're not allowed to do this on the Yom Tov. The Gemara is going to get into the halachas of why. But say on Shemitah, say on Yom Tov, on Chalamoid, ein migazmin. Migazmin means to chop a branch off a tree, and that will prompt the growth of many branches in the area that you chopped off the tree. That you're not allowed to do. But v'sochin shemen ligzai. Before they would chop that branch off a tree, they would smear it around with oil. So you are allowed to smear it around with oil, bein b'moed, bein b'shvius. You're just not allowed to actually cut that branch off. Because Rashi says the reason why you're allowed to do that is, once again, it's protecting the life of the tree. If you would cut the branch off a tree before it was smeared with oil, the tree would die. I don't know. I'm not a botanist. I don't know exactly how these things work. Okay, Kavalta. The less nagar, the lebar nagar the Afrikaner. Such a difficult thing to understand. Nobody could explain it. Amar Avina, Allah, Anna, loy nagar, Anna, lebar nagar, Anna. I'm no expert. But I will be able to explain this halacha that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah brought. Michael Kashalei, what would be your concern here? If your concern is moyed ashviz kakashalei, and the question is, why should there be a distinction with these two things, maslin and mesimin, that's allowed on shviz but not on Yom Tov? Maish neshviz teshari u'maish nemud aser. That's not a kasha. Midami shviz melacha aser achmona tircha shari. Only a melacha is what's prohibited on Shemitah, but something that's a tircha is mutter. And doing these two activities, which are maslin and mesamin, is a tircha, but it's not a malacha, and therefore they're allowed on shviyas. But moed afilu tircha nami aser. But on chalamoid, something that's a tircha is also aser. So there's no issue as to why there should be a distinction between chalamoid and shviyas, because there's a good reason for it. Velaziyum agizim kakashalim. Maybe the kasha is, why is ziyum mutter and gizim is also? So to review, ziyum is putting that manure patch on the tree, and gizim is cutting a branch off. Mashna ziyum de shari. Why do we allow ziyum? Umashna gizim de aser. And why is gizim aser? Again, Zaktamar, that's not shver at all. Midami. Ziyum ukmi ilana v'shari. Ziyum means you have a tree that's in danger of dying. So you're putting this patch on it to protect it, not to help promote its growth. You're just trying to protect it from damage. It's like a dober of it. But gizim, ivri alona. When you're doing gizim, you're actually enhancing the tree. You're making it grow more. That you're not allowed to do. That will be usher on even on shviyas. So that can't be the problem. Velazim azim kakashim. Maybe the question is from ziyum to ziyum. Our Mishnah says that ziyum is allowed. the katani maslin umazim b'shvius. But we have another brisa that contradicts this. V'rimini mizamin es anatiyos. You're allowed to new saplings. You're allowed to do ziyum too. The karchanoisam. You know how in the winter you find that the fancy houses have their shrubbery wrapped in like some type of sackcloth, so that you do that to protect it. So you're allowed to tie these up for the winter. The kite they would even prune them to protect them from the harsh winter. Meaning they would literally build a wall around the tree, similar to the tree safety zones that the cities require now during construction, and they would fill up those areas with earth. Again, it would protect the trees. And you could even continue to water it ad Rosh Hashanah of an Erev Shemitah, because we normally know that there's a lot of activities that are usher even before the Shemitah year, as a Zara, as a Harchaka. But there are certain things that they did allow. And this list of items, as we just read, are allowed, but only up until Rosh Hashanah. Ad Rosh Hashanah in B'Shvius Loi. So you see Mizamin, which is one of the things that this Bryce lists off, is mutter up until Rosh Hashanah. It's not also as Archaka before Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah, but on the Shemitah itself, you're not allowed to do it. Yet we just said that you are allowed to do it. Zok Gemara, that's not a kasha either, because V'dilma Kedir of Ukva Bar Chama. Maybe we're working with the svara of Ukva Bar Chama. The Amar of Ukva Bar Chama, Trei Kishkushe Have. There's two types of Kishkushe, which means Chafir Tachas Azaisim. There's sometimes you could do the same act to a tree, but with small differences. One would have the effect of just protecting it from damage. Yet, if you do it a little differently, it would enhance it, which would not be allowed on Shemitah. Sometimes you're just doing it to make the tree grow, to enhance its growth. That will be also on Shemitah. But sometimes if there's cracks, or Rasha Stumapili is if the roots are coming above the ground, and it's not good for the roots to be above the ground, they have to be completely covered with earth, there would be mutter, because that's to stop damage to the tree. So Hakanami, we could say the same thing here. Trei zihamumi having. There's two types of zihamumi. One that would be osir, which is the Bryce's zihum, and one which would be mutter, which was our original zihum. So trei zihamumi have echad lo kumi iloni v'shari, v'echad levri iloni v'osir. So that's not the kasha. So what is the problem that we're referencing with this halacha that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah brought, that you need an expert to help answer? And who's the expert who's going to answer it? Ravina. What special kasha do we need Ravina to help? Maybe the kasha is by sicha. The katani sicha shaman ligzim bein b'moed u'bein b'shvius. Right? Our brisa said that you're allowed to smear oil around the branch of a tree before you might cut it off. Or a minute, we have a brisa that says you're not allowed to do it. Sachin is a pagin. You're allowed to smear the dates, the figs, the new figs, the young figs, the immature figs, with oil. Umenakvin, you could make a hole. These are different things that you would do to enhance the growth. Rashi says by mefatvin is you'd fill up the holes that they have with oil. It made it grow. It made the figs grew nice and juicy. But you're only allowed to do that ad Rosh Hashanah. Ad Rosh Hashanah in B'Shvius Loi. So you see, sachin smearing with oil is prohibited on Yom Tov and on Shvius. How could our brisa say it's allowed? Zoktamar again, midami. We're talking about the smearing that's going to prevent the tree from getting sick, from getting damaged. Clearly, by smearing those figs with oil, it was to enhance its growth. That would be also. So what is the problem here that we need Ravina to answer? Amalei of Sama Bered Rav Ashi Ravina Bar Yirmiyah Sicha Demoyed Azim Demoyed Kakashla. The kasha is why Sicha on Moyed is mutter and Ziyam on Moyed is osir. Correct, Gemara, that's not either a question. Michni Hayukim. I'm sorry, there is a Michni Hayukimi, but Hayukimi. They're both made to protect the tree from damage. Right, so Sicha on Moed is to prevent it from damage if a branch is cut off, and the Ziyum is if it's missing some of its bark, we have to put a bandage on. So they should both be allowed. Yet Sicha is allowed and Ziyum is not. Ma'ishna Haida Shari, Ma'ishna Haida Aser. So that is the kasha that Ravina was referring to. That you need a professional to answer. or even a professional can't answer. And Ravina said, I'm not a professional, but I have an answer. I do have an answer. That's what he meant, that there is no way to answer this. Did Ravina say he will answer it? Because we don't have an answer to this one. So let's have a look back. And they will answer it. But it doesn't bring Ravina's answer over here. It does not bring the answer here. So I don't know what the answer is. Because Ravina says I do have an answer. And let me see if he brings, if the Mesivta brings a teretz to that. Hang to Amalei, Luzen Cham Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah, Shein Chacham Sheitar Sebraisa, Tenemak Shela Amur Shein Teretz. But Lamaisa Ravina said I have an answer. So let's see if it says over here. Oh, so Yesh Lahakshes, Kate said I also Kushazu Vidai Shel Ravina. How come Ravina didn't have this kasha? Shemachmas Amar Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah Shein Sheitar Sebraisa. Oh, so Ravina had a whole bunch of different possible kashas that he answered, but he didn't think of this kasha. Why didn't he think of this kasha? So he brings down from the Chedusha Galanti, She'omnam Rav Sama Savar Shebein Sichas Agizum Ubein Ziyum Hamaka Nechshavas Letircha Asur B'Moed. Both of these are a tircha. So Abizoy Shver, why is Sicha Mutter and Ziyum is Osir? But Ravina held that Ziyum Hamaka, that's a tircha and it's Osir. But shmiring with oil is not so difficult. So that's why he didn't have this kasha. Because he held that shmiring with oil wasn't difficult, and that's why it's allowed versus the ziyum, which is a much harder type of work to do. Kizok to Gemara weiter. Amar Yudah Marav, avoidus kechavim she'oivdim oisa b'makal. You had an avodah zarah that it was served with a makal. What was the avodah zarah? Shemekashkeshim lufnecha b'makal. You would stand in front of the avodah zarah and you would bang a stick against something else. It would make noise. That's how you serve this avodah zarah. So what if you had that type of avodah zarah, and what you did was you didn't do the classic avodah for it. You didn't bang with a stick, but shiber makal b'fanel. You broke a stick in front of it. Chayiv. You're going to be chayiv. You didn't do the prescribed avodah, and you didn't do a zvicha or a shchita or a aktorah or a zrika sadam. So why would you be chayiv? Zorg makal b'fanel. But if you merely threw a stick in front of it, potter, you'll be potter. Amalei Abaya l'Rav Maishna Shiber the Havalei Kein Zevicha. So now we have our answer. You know why Shiber l'Fonel is also? Because breaking a stick is like breaking the neck of an animal. It's like shechting an animal. So Rashi says something very interesting. If it wasn't for the fact that breaking a stick was Kein Zevicha, it wouldn't be considered an avodah that would be mechayiv you for this avodah zarah. Because this avodah zarah says just bang sticks together to make noise. Don't break sticks. But just because breaking a stick is kain tzvicha, if you took it to a regular avodah zarah, it wouldn't qualify either. It has to have some similarity to the avodah zarah. It involved sticks, but it also has to be an avodah that's bifnim. That's why it's chai. But zarak nami have a lokain zrika. Throwing a stick should also be like spritzing the blood. So why isn't that chai? Amar lei. Because be'inas rika mishtaveres. When you spritz blood, the blood vaporizes. It becomes in small little pieces. The liquid breaks up. The stick, if you throw it, it's still one big stick. That doesn't qualify as a zrika, veleka. So we're literally drilling down into the nuances of serving avodah zarah if it's going to be asur or not. Eisei frekt Gemara. Safas latzoya. What if you went to a standard of avodah zarah and you fed it, you shoved into its mouth soya? That's horrible practices. Or you put an avet, and you poured it out. You literally poured a bucket of urine in front of this, and this is a standard of avodah zarah. This is not a balpor that we're talking about. Chayiv, you'll be chayiv. Rashi afilu ein avodah zarah. I understand why. Ikos rika mishtaperes. By the avachal meraglayim, when you're dumping the liquid out, it splashes into different directions. It's one log. It's unbelievable how we're digging in over here. Zok Gemara, Bitsoya lacha. We're speaking about loose soya. We're speaking about diarrhea. So it's like a zrika. Okay. Let's stop here. Let's stop here. But it's amazing how they had to delve into the details of Avodah Zarah. But what's even more mind-boggling is that people were so cuckoo in those days. They did these things. Anyway, everyone should have an awesome day.
Goodbye.